Why are they looking at that painting? Why is it in this room? Why does it cost $1 billion? Why is that painting worth so much? And the answer to that is, well, we don't really know. Like, it happened. They're sacred objects in some sense, and we gaze at them in ignorance and wonder. And the reason for that is that the unknown shines through them at us and in partially articulated forms. Real artists are contending with the unknown, right? And they're possessed by it. They have a personality trait, openness, that makes them do that. They can't even help it. And I've had lots of creative people in my clinical practice, and I can tell you the worst thing for creative people is to not be creative, because they just die. They're cursed with the necessity of putting a foot out into the unknown and making sense of it. And then they're also cursed with the necessity of trying to make a living while they're doing that, which they can't, because you can't. It's almost impossible to monetize creative action, as many of you who are creative will no doubt find out. It's very, very frustrating. It's not that creative action is without value, right? Because the creative people are entrepreneurs, and the creative people revitalize cities, and the creative people make things magnificent and beautiful. What's the economic value of that? It's absolutely incalculable. And what's interesting too is that you build that beauty in, and then the farther away you get from it in time, the more valuable it becomes, right? Instead of decaying, it has exactly the opposite effect. Its value magnifies. And anyway, so that's what artists are doing. And so one of the things I would say is buy a damn piece of art, you know? Find one that really speaks to you, and buy a piece of art, because you invite that into your life, and it's a lookout if you do it. If it's a real piece of art, because you'll also get a little introduction to the artist, and then that'll seep into your life, and that'll change things like mad. But it's unbelievably worth it, because it opens your eyes to the domain of the transcendent. That's the right way of thinking about it. A real piece of art is a window into the transcendent. That's what it is. And you need that in your life, because you're finite and limited and bounded, right, by your ignorance and your lack of knowing. And unless you can make a connection to the transcendent, then you don't have the strength to prevail. And it's really hard to make something beautiful. And it's really worthwhile. And what's really cool is if you learn to make something beautiful, even one thing, if you could just make one thing in your life beautiful, then you've established a relationship with beauty. And then you can start to expand that relationship with beauty out into the world, like into other elements of your life. And that is so worthwhile. It's just incredibly, crazily worthwhile. And that's an invitation to the divine. You know, you have to be daring to do that. And people are terrified of it. People are terrified of color. They paint their walls beige. They're terrified of art. They buy some mass-produced thing because they don't want anybody laughing at them for their lack of taste. And they would get laughed at because they have no taste. But you have to, well, it's right, because what do you know, right? You have to develop it. And so you're going to stumble along and make mistakes to begin with. And you're going to show yourself, because if you buy, I think this is pretty, and you know, somebody comes over and goes, hey, what's up with you? It's kind of hard on your self-esteem, but it's you're stumbling towards you're stumbling towards the kingdom of God. That's what you're stumbling towards when you try to make an aesthetic decision and to put something in your life that's beautiful. And it's unbelievably worthwhile to do that. And you have to steer clear of the frauds and the con artists and all of that. And art is full of that, of course, because it's difficult to distinguish between the real thing and the fraud, but it's unbelievably worthwhile. And so we need to understand the role of art and literature and stop thinking about it as an option. It's not an option. It's not an option. What is it said? Man does not live by bread alone. That's exactly right. We live by beauty. We live by literature. We live by art. And literally, not metaphorically. We cannot live without it, because life is too dismal and tragic in the absence of the sublime.